gin joints in all the towns in all the world. She walks into mine.
Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Talk. I'm John, and today we're here to talk about the 1943 all-time classic, Casablanca. We're also here to talk about its brand new 4K Blu-ray release that just came out from Warner Brothers. But before we dive into that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, tech and game reviews, we try and do them all here on the channel, and nothing would help us out more than by you liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So Casablanca was released in 1943, directed by Michael Cortez, starring Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, and Claude Rains, amongst many other cast members that appear in this film. Casablanca is one of the most famous films ever. It tops many people's lists of the greatest films ever made. It tops a bunch of critics' lists of one of the greatest films ever made. And it also floats around the top of the AFI Top 100 Films Ever Made and the Sight and Sound Top 100 Films Ever Made. This just places on so many people's lists of one of the greatest films that could ever be produced. And Warner Brothers didn't actually have faith in this film. They didn't expect this to stand out amongst the many other hundreds of films that Hollywood produced and many films that Warner Brothers themselves released back in the 1940s, because back in Hollywood, they would just turn out films like crazy. You know, nowadays we see studios like Warner Brothers or Paramount, Universal, they'll put out like around the 5 film a year mark. Back then, you could put out 30, 40 films a year, and they don't even think about it because these had pretty low budgets. They're all shot on the Warner Brothers sound stages and the Warner Brothers back lots. And this film was no different than that. Despite what you might think, Casablanca was actually shot almost completely on Warner Brothers sound stages and on Warner Brothers back lots. So that should just tell you the production design and set design that went into this. Even though, in my opinion, it does still look a lot like sets. You can tell that this isn't a real place. But that does add to the film. And actually, there's a documentary on here, and even Steven Spielberg does say that that's a lot of the charm of this film, especially if you're going back and watching a 1940s film, you're watching a classic film. You know, this film is almost 80 years old, so you got to understand the world was a completely different place. The way they shot films was a completely different thing. The way characters delivered dialogue, that's always my biggest hiccup when I go back to classic films. A lot of people, like in this film, it was really Humphrey Bogart's character. The way he would just, Ingrid Bergman would say something and he immediately has a reply, and it always just comes off like somebody's just reciting lines, but that's just of the time. That's not anything that the film is doing wrong. That's not anything that Humphrey Bogart is doing wrong. It's just, that's how the time was. That's how they made films. And this film is still incredible. And I think it's really carried by the screenplay. I think this is one of the best screenplays that's ever been produced, and I think that's exactly why people get wrapped up into this story. So it's based on an unproduced play called Everybody Goes to Rick's. And that was really just dealing with the political outline of this film, because that's always going on. Even though most people always think of the love story between Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman's character, and also Paul Henreid's character of Victor Laszlo, but really it's also got this very big political background going on, because that's another big thing about this. This came out in 1943, just in the middle of World War II, and that was a big thing back then too, because America joined World War II in December of 1941 after the attack on Pearl Harbor. This takes place in December of 1941, right around the time that America actually joined the Second World War. So in Casablanca, you have a bunch of different moving pieces going on. You got the Nazis coming in. You have Claude Rains just playing. Well, for me, he steals the show. I love his relationship with Rick. I think he does a phenomenal job acting. You know, he floats this line where he's kind of playing every side, but he still has this friendship with Rick, and I think their friendship is really expanded on in this film, especially once he realizes that Rick, because Rick never takes a side, and I think Rick became cold-hearted and everything after everything that happened with Ingrid Bergman's character. That's kind of where he made that switch. That's, he kind of felt like, life just kind of kicked him in the balls and he can't really go on, but he's got this bar to run. He just looks at himself as just a saloon runner, he says. And that's it. Once Claude Rains' character of Lewis realizes that, his friend is actually a nice guy and actually has a heart in him, he kind of seems to get more on his side, especially once we get to the ending of this film. I think that's when we finally realize, and we get that classic line, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, Lewis. That really is another great part of this. I know everyone always thinks of the three-way romance of this, but I also really do enjoy the, the political ramifications that are going on in this film, and I also enjoy the relationship that Rick has with other characters, like with Sam, and it just shows you that, despite everything that's happening, because Humphrey Bogart plays this character as just somebody who's just so cold, and we see in flashbacks that he is a warm character, and he loved one woman, and when she left him without giving a reason, it broke him. It made him a broken man, but you know what? He used that coldness to run this very successful bar in Casablanca, and it really is a testament to him, and then to show that relationships, that like he becomes this man, this good man deep down. That's what he is. He does the right thing in the end to all parties. He does it for Victor Laszlo. He does it for Ingrid Bergman's character. He does it for Lewis. He knows Lewis is his friend. He's just there to do his job. But Lewis sees through it and says, you know what? We can do this together. We're buddies. We're going to stick up for each other, and I know that you have a heart of gold, and, I got a pretty nice heart down deep inside of me, too. So this is actually a film that I came to pretty late in life. I would say I was about 20, 21 years old the first time I actually saw this. I never saw it as a kid. It really just, when I started getting into film, I came to it, and I was very skeptical because, this is one of those classic films I had seen spoofed on, I think on Rugrats and everything, so I knew a lot of the most famous lines, like,
He's looking at you, kid.
"We'll always have Paris. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Those lines I had heard many times, seen them spoofed in many different things, way before I actually finally got to Casablanca. And then when I did, I was like, it's going to be like this influential film that influences other films, but I'm not going to really enjoy it. That is completely wrong. I love Casablanca. I can come back to this every couple years. It's not my favorite film ever, but it is just so beautiful. It's beautifully shot. The noir lighting of this with all the shadows and the blacks and whites. You got the blinds and everything from classic noir films all in there. The dialogue is great. The screenplay, like I said, is just incredible. It really lays out all the pieces of the story in the first act, and it builds to an incredible third act. That ending definitely sticks that landing. It really hits you in the feels, just like you wanted it to do. It did a great job. I really do love Casablanca. I'm very surprised myself at how much I really enjoy Casablanca, because this really, it's just one of those films that is a classic film. Everyone tells you how good it is, and it's going to be overhyped, but yet somehow it still lives up to those expectations to become a great film. So if you haven't checked out Casablanca yet, and you're just waiting to see, maybe this is going to be your first time seeing it, and you wanted to see, is it really as good as people say, and you want to check it out, and you finally got to grab this brand new 4K from Warner Bros., I can highly recommend that you check out this film no matter which way you see it, because it is one of the most classic films of all time. But we're also here today to talk about its brand new 4K. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here it is, Casablanca on 4K. And this is the first release from Warner Bros. Of Casablanca in 10 years. The last release actually came out in 2012. And I believe that's actually the Blu-ray disc that is in this package. So Casablanca is one of Warner Brothers' most famous films. They will never let this go out to a boutique studio. Even the DVD was actually really nice looking for this. So Warner Brothers has always put effort into Casablanca. This is one of the cornerstones of the entire company, so they are always going to put a little bit of extra effort into this film because they know that this film did work for them. This film came out at a time when they were only really just putting out a bunch of different films, and this one stood out in the crowd. When they were just putting out a bunch of 7s, Casablanca was a 10. So they know what they have, and they are always going to release this themselves, so never expect a boutique studio to do it. But you know what? Warner Brothers did a great job on this release. First of all, really nice packaging. I love the new art design that they went for with this. Great slipcover. I enjoy that light blue over the black and white imagery. I think it's great. You get the same stuff on the back. It looks great. You pop it open. It's going to be hard to pick up on the camera. I'll try and get as close as you can. That is actually not plain black disc art. It's actually kind of got this like faded gray into black look. It's a dark gray, but it's actually individually designed. Boutique Studios put a lot of extra effort into making those disc designs themselves look really nice, and you don't really see that from studios much, and Warner Brothers especially. They'll usually put out a lot of flat black discs, but they actually put a little bit of extra effort into that, and I really did appreciate that. But what about the disc? How is that 4K transfer? Well, I'm here to tell you that is a huge upgrade over the previous Blu-ray release. The visuals are stunning. They put HDR10 over here, no Dolby Vision. I don't know what Warner Brothers thing with Dolby is, but for some reason all the recent Warner Brothers releases don't have Dolby Vision, but that does not hurt this in any way. The HDR10 I think really steals the show in this, because the old Blu-ray, it was in black and white, but the whites, they looked a little flat, almost gray. Same thing with the black. So it was more of like, dark grays, light grays, whereas now you can see the real contrast between the whites and blacks. Right from that opening shot, after we get all those dissolves explaining the story, and we take a crane shot down into our first view of Casablanca, you know, it's a very bright and sunny day. And on the Blu-ray, you really don't know it's a bright sunny day. But on this 4K, you can tell totally it's a beautiful sunny day, probably like 12 in the afternoon. And you can tell that so clearly on this 4K Blu-ray disc. I was blown away by the visuals on this. Like, I was blown away at first, but I was like, okay, let me go back and compare the Blu-ray. You know, the Blu-ray might be really nice. And the Blu-ray is pretty good. But to this 4K, this is a huge jump visually. This is going to be the best way you have ever seen Casablanca by far. So if you were a fan of Casablanca, whatever the price is visually, you are going to be very happy with that upgrade. I was pretty much stunned. This is the best it's ever looked. I was stunned right out of the gate at how good this looked. I really just, you know, can't deny how beautiful this 4K was. Were there some dips in quality? Slightly when they're inside the bar. There are sometimes that the lighting can make it look a little bit flatter. But they were really going for certain lighting with this film because, like I said, it's very much noir lit film. So if you know how noir films are lit, they are very dark. And there are a lot of dark scenes in here. And the 4K definitely did handle those dark scenes. But there are some points where it will look a little bit flat, but very, very minor inconveniences that you'll notice. Nothing that's going to take you out of the film. Nothing that's going to make you go, whoa, what happened here? So you have nothing to worry about as far as the 4K visuals go. They are stunning. Now, the audio track is a DTS HD Master Audio 2.0. It's a 1943 film, so you're not going to get a 5.1. You're going to get a front-heavy, dialogue-driven, 2-channel audio track, and it does fine. It does just what you expected it to do. Did it sound better than the Blu-ray? No, it sounded about exactly the same. Now, I think they might be the same audio track, but there is a little bit of different wording on it from Blu-ray.com, so I'm not 100% sure, and I can't find if they did a new audio scan or not, but it did sound almost identical, and they're still really good. Like I said, it's a very dialogue-heavy driven film, so it does fine. As long as the dialogue comes in crisp and clear, just like it does, then I think you're going to be very happy with that audio track. It's the same Casablanca you've always known and loved, and it sounds just as beautiful today. Now, what about extras? Now, from a studio release, you don't expect a lot of new extras because they've already pretty much released them all in previous releases, especially from Warner Brothers, and there really is no new extras on here again, especially since they're all on that Blu-ray disc, which is the same Blu-ray disc that came out 10 years ago. So every extra that was on there 10 years ago is on here now. But there is one extra I want to point out if you've never checked it out. It's a 34-minute featurette called Casablanca, an Unlikely Classic, and they have interviews on there with Steven Spielberg and William Friedkin, and just hearing them and their love for the film and how they break it down, just like what they got out of the film and how they just analyzed it themselves, it is beautiful. It's going to make you really think, and it's going to just show you how Steven Spielberg, I just love watching Steven Spielberg do interviews because he loves movies, and he loves Casablanca, and he breaks it down for you, and you just see the energy coming out of him. So if you have never actually seen that featurette, I'm sure you can watch it on YouTube. You don't have to buy the disc, but if you can, watch it. I think it's a really great extra, and it is included on that second Blu-ray disc. So overall, can I recommend Casablanca? Right now, I believe it's under $25, and I think it's very much worth that price. It is a Warner Brothers release, so more than likely it will be on sale for Black Friday. Probably not that much off. If I had to take a guess, more than likely this will be a $19.99 price Black Friday deal. So if you can get it at that price, I do think it's actually a steal because it is a huge visual jump from the previous Blu-ray, and it should be seen by any film lover and anybody who collects 4K Blu-rays. I think it's one of the best black and white transfers of the year. It either comes down to, for me, it either comes down to this, Paths of Glory of the Killing, as far as black and white transfers from this year, but I don't know, I might give that edge to Casablanca. So it really is a great 4K. I can't recommend it highly enough. If I was going to give this a score out of 10, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. The only point I'm actually taking off is the lack of any new extras. I do enjoy the extras that are on here, but the fact that we haven't gotten anything new is a little bit disappointing, but that visual upgrade is just incredible. Great packaging. It is the definitive version now of Casablanca. If you're a fan of Casablanca and you collect 4K Blu-rays, or you want to get into 4K Blu-ray collecting, this is the version of Casablanca you need for your collection. And we're going to actually leave a link for our Amazon affiliate link in the description below. You can buy Casablanca right through there. It's no extra cost to you, and it really does help the channel out. Another thing that helps the channel out is by you liking this video and subscribing to the channel.